Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a guy who has worked as a teacher, principal, district level director, and consultant. This guy, Al Thomas, the Edu Copilot, has a passion for equipping learners with creative problem-solving skills and tech, especially using Adobe tools to let students create. In our discussion, Al and I talk about visual storytelling using tools like Adobe Creative Cloud Express, Canva, Adobe Premiere Rush, Adobe Capture, Adobe Photoshop Lightroom, Apple Clips, DaVinci Resolve, and Final Cut, and a couple of awesome projects, I should say, to go along with each of those tools. So many good creativity tools and so many good creativity ideas. Let's get to it.
I'm Brian Carpenter, host of Fresh Air at 5, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast with Jake Miller.
Hello, welcome in. My name is Jake, and I'm here to talk to you about duct tape and educational technology and how the two fit together to form a goofy metaphor, but also an EdTech integration mindset that I believe can make the selection of tech tools for your learning environment a little bit less stressful. I am so excited to share Al's insights with you today. Al shares some great activities for bringing creativity into our classrooms with visual storytelling, and he includes some great apps for doing it. We talk about Adobe Creative Cloud Express, formerly known as Adobe Spark. We talk about Canva. We talk about Adobe Premiere Rush and Adobe Capture and Adobe Photoshop Lightroom, and to get some things in there that aren't Adobe, we also talk about Apple Clips and DaVinci Resolve, which I had never heard of, and Final Cut. Before we get to my chat with Al, though, I want to tell you about two quick things. First, I am a part of Fresh PD, which is brought to you by Flipgrid and Elevate Books EDU. This professional development is built inside Flipgrid using Flipgrid topics, and therefore it's free. And as with pretty much everything in Flipgrid, it's on demand, meaning you can go to it whenever you want, and when you're too busy, you don't have to go there. Don't worry about when a PD is scheduled for. You pick when it's best for you and hop in there and check out what's being shared. And that means also that they are quick. They're short. They're in Flipgrid, so they're just 1, 2, 3, maybe 4-minute long videos, and you can watch as many as you want. Have a few minutes during your planning period or while you're eating your lunch or before you go to bed and want to learn something new. Hop in there on your own time, the amount of time you want, and learn what you can out of it. Free, quick, on demand, easy, and it's EdCamp-like, meaning if you've ever been to an EdCamp, you get to pick what you talk about and what you learn about. Hop in there and ask a question, and it might just get answered by myself or one of the other awesome Elevate authors that are in there, including Joe and Kristen Merrill, Holly Clark, Team Jenna Lee, who we heard here on the podcast recently, Monica Burns, Trevor McKenzie, Rebecca Bushby, and then multiple other amazing educators who just are a part of it. I saw Andy Knieven in there. I saw Jen Giffen in there. I saw Stacy Roshan in there. Lots of amazing people sharing, but also answering. So join in. Tell us what you want to learn or just learn from what's already in there. Oh, and there's prizes. Should I have led with that? Seriously, just by posting one video, the odds are really, really high that you'll win at least one book and maybe even an entire set of books. Yeah, a book by the Merrills, a book by Holly Clark, the book by Jenna Lee, a book from Monica Burns, a book by Trevor McKenzie and Rebecca Bushby, and the Educational Duct Tape book from me. So you've got a chance to win one or a whole set, and if you don't win, you'll still get some really awesome learning out of it. You could participate now through February 28th. Head to flipgrid.com/freshpd. Okay, I said there were two things that I wanted to share with you before we started, and for the second one, you're going to need to grab your Kindle because Educational Duct Tape and EdTech Integration Mindset, the book, is out as an ebook. So head over to that Kindle bookstore and grab yourself a copy. So happy to have it there so that it could meet a different audience, people who might not buy the physical version of the book. Maybe we'll check this out and become duct tapers that way. I've got some sweet giveaways to celebrate. I actually haven't quite mapped it all out and planned it all all out, so I'm not ready to announce them here on the podcast, but I will be announcing them in my newsletter. So make sure you're signed up to my newsletter so that you can receive it. There's a link in the show notes. Also, you can just head to jakemiller.net/newsletter to see what the promotions are, along with the release of Educational Duct Tape as an ebook and as a Kindle book. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me just grab my soapbox from over here. Yeah. There we go. It's perfect. Climb up on there. I got the Wordle in 2 tries today. How'd you do? Seriously, on the day that I'm recording this, I did get it in 2 tries. I actually yelped when I got it. It was pretty amazing. What makes Wordle so popular? And how can we leverage it in our educational spaces? If you don't know the game, it's a game where you have 6 attempts to guess a 5-letter word. You start off by just picking any 5-letter word and typing it in. It just has to be a word. And when you type in the word, it will show the letters as gray, meaning they're not in the word, or yellow, meaning they're in the word but not in that location, or green, meaning they're in the word and you have them in the right location. So then after that, you then narrow it down and try more words, and hopefully in those 6 turns, you figure out the word. So how does this connect to education and educational technology? Well, you know me and you know the soapbox moments, so you know I'm going to find a way. First off, the general gameplay kind of reminds me of how we try different educational technologies and different instructional strategies and practices and different pedagogies and different tools and different techniques in our classrooms. And we put them into our lessons and our units, and sometimes they're gray. They didn't work at all. And sometimes they're yellow. They're right, they belong, but maybe we didn't have them in quite the right spot or set up quite the right way. And sometimes they're green, and we know right away, that's perfect, don't change that thing. You've just got to change some things around it, right? We find these pieces little by little by little. And the nice thing is, just like in Wordle, as you identify some of them, it makes it easier to identify the other ones because you can now turn your focus to those. And that's what we do through our years of teaching, right? We figure out certain parts of our practice and we're able to just kind of leave those in place and find the stuff that works alongside of it, right? And that's kind of how Wordle works, right? And that's great for a game design, but what makes Wordle so popular? I mean, everybody's talking about it popular. I mean, it's on the Today Show and on the Tonight Show popular, and it's viral popular, right? And my students love it, and I talk to my students about it, and my son loves it. My son and my wife and I have a group message where we share our scores every day. What's making it so popular? Well, that's what's making it so popular. The sharing aspect. It's what we here in Educational Duct Tape Land call the adjacent possible. It's something we're connecting over. We're all trying to solve the same puzzle, and we could share our results with each other without spoiling it for anyone. It's kind of like educational technologies and classroom practices, right? If we share them, if we talk about them, if we share the things that work and maybe the things that didn't work and maybe our near misses and our things that were all of a sudden they worked and we can't believe how excited we were that they worked. We learn from each other's techniques. We learn from each other's strategies and we all get better. And that's what makes Wordle so popular is the community aspect. And sometimes I feel like that's missing in our classrooms and in education. I don't necessarily mean in our classrooms between our students. I mean between teachers. Now, listen, I'm a teacher, 8th grade science. This year has been tough. That's an understatement. Last year was tough. Also an understatement. And I'm not going to say that I have some advice to you that's going to make everything wonderful and amazing. I don't. This is a tough situation that we've been in for the last 2 years. But I do think that if we share more of our successes or things that we've even learned didn't work, and if we show that we're excited about solving this puzzle that is education, just like we're solving the puzzle that is Wordle, if we show that we're excited about it and we start talking about the things that are working for us, I think that drives some excitement about what we're doing. You know, you think I don't want to talk to my colleagues and my friends about teaching strategies. What a boring thing to talk about. Well, today we talked about letters and consonants and vowels and where you put a certain consonant in a certain word and what word you guessed first. I want to talk about something that seems lame to talk about. 5-letter words and the placement of consonants and vowels would be pretty high up on my list. Yet, because of the shared aspect of it and because of the puzzle solving aspect of it, it's not boring to talk about. It's fun to talk about. And I think if we share about our educational practices and our educational technology applications, I think it could have the same effect. Maybe not quite, because Jimmy Fallon won't be doing them and sharing about them on Twitter and on the Tonight Show. But still, if we share about our successes and we listen to other people's successes, we stand to learn, they stand to learn, and we stand to bring some excitement into what we do. I mean, what we do is really amazing and impressive. And just like when I want to celebrate solving a Wordle in 2 clues, I feel like we should celebrate some of the amazing things we do in our classrooms, right? You should. It's amazing. The one cool thing about our job, or one of multiple cool things about our job, but one cool thing about our job is how much room for excitement there is. Lots of people work in jobs where the things that they do day in and day out are boring, and there's no chance to achieve something that goes like, wow, I did that. I pulled it off, right? But we have those opportunities. We have a hard job. Lately, we've had a job that feels kind of crummy for a lot of us, and we're struggling. And that's true. But I do think we can learn a little bit from Wordle, right? We could try to solve the puzzle. We could share about the things we did to solve the puzzle, and we could listen to the things that other people did to solve the puzzle. Happy puzzling, folks. I can't wait to share today's interview with you. Well, I can wait a few minutes, actually, because I want to take a moment to remind you about my newsletter. The best way to make sure that you don't miss an episode of this podcast is to subscribe to the podcast, but the best way to make sure you don't miss a new blog post or an EduGIF or anything like that is to sign up for my newsletter. I also curate and share 3 of my favorite new finds from my own Twitter browsing and online learning in each newsletter. 3 things that have really wowed me, and I put them in that newsletter to share with you, if you subscribe, that is. Plus, whenever I put out something new of my own, it goes to my newsletter before anywhere else. So if you're not signed up, what are you waiting for? Just head over to jakemiller.net/newsletter to sign up. That link's in the show notes, but seriously, jakemiller.net/newsletter. Can't be much easier to remember than that, right?
Today's guest.
All right, today my guest is Al Thomas. Al is an educational leader with a passion for creativity. He has more than 20 years in the field of education as a teacher, principal, district level director, and consultant. He believes that if we are to prepare students for future success, we must equip them with creative problem-solving skills that harness their talents and abilities. You can find Al on his website and his work on his website at educopilot.com, or find him on Instagram or Twitter at educopilot. But before you go looking on Instagram and Twitter and on the interwebs, you can look right here, because Al is here with us in the I said the name of my podcast wrong there, the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Welcome in, Al. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So thank you for having me on. I'm excited to jump into the conversation and hopefully have something that is worth listening to multiple times. So
multiple times.
Yeah,
I would take that.
I am taking the challenge on myself.
Nice. I will, I'll get called by my my podcast host. Like, something appears to be wrong with your feed. People are downloading this one particular episode multiple times. So there's a bug in the system or something. I go, no, Al was just that good that people listen multiple times.
Don't dig too deep, because that'll probably be me just constantly downloading it.
Al, I don't know what happened. This episode got 7 times as many downloads as normal. And you're like, oh yeah, I don't know.
I mean, come on, mom, family member, let's get them all on this one episode.
Everybody just download. You don't have to listen or play it in the background. Just turn it on and press play. Just that's good enough for me, right?
Exactly.
I love it. That's good strategy. Good use of the statistics right there. I love it. Al, I've got to say before we start recording, I am so jealous of your logo. That thing is so sweet. I think that's one of the first things that caught my eye. It's not your profile picture on your Twitter anymore, but it's on your website. The cartoon of you with the kind of the pilot hat and the phone or the camera ready to take a picture. I love that. It's so sweet.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it just kind of blended several of the elements that I really love. So my dad was served in the military for a long time and talked about countless conversations about the Tuskegee Airmen and the work that they did and just the impact. And then just my love for photography. And then ultimately, I think in the work that I've done in education, I've always tried to center it around how do I come alongside educators that are doing great work and help support them and give them pathways to things that maybe they haven't tried, but they're open to, or help convince them to give something to try, because it may be something that it just really hits the mark with a student or so. So all of those things kind of blended in the logo, and I can never shave the beard now, so I guess I'm stuck with it.
You're stuck with it. Yeah. You might want to start prepping it just in case beards go out. That way you can have the new version ready.
Nah, I'm going to have to rock it because there is no hair that will ever appear on the top. So,
well, you got the hat and the logo. You don't need that. You don't need to worry about that.
There you go.
Yeah. I love it though. I think the Copilot thing too, like kind of like you're saying, that's like the perfect term, not only for a good teacher, but also for a good, tech coach or, consultant that works alongside teachers, being that co-pilot where, we both have access to a steering wheel. We're both bringing something to this experience. It's not me as the sage on the stage or the expert or anything like that. We're working together. That whole co-pilot metaphor, I really like it. I think it's on point.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the mark when you say we both have control of the steering wheel, but it's also I'm not going to grab the steering wheel first. It's definitely one of those things. I'm there to support. Let's talk through. Let's kind of figure out what's the best direction to go, and let's help. Let me be those additional hands to kind of help push those extra buttons or pull certain things over to you that you can try and use. So it's been an incredible journey. So I love it.
I like it. Well, I feel like we're starting to talk ed tech already, Al, and I'm gonna pump the brakes. I don't know what do you call that when you're flying a plane? How do you slow down? What do you do when you're slowing down?
Oh, you
pull back on the thing
a little bit.
Doodle.
You do a little bit.
We're not flying any planes here.
Yeah,
we're flying metaphorical planes.
Just throttle back. Just
throttle back. There we go. We can throttle back. Well, I'm going to throttle back and play a game. Are you up for a game?
I am up for a game.
2 truths and 1 lie.
Nice. We're going to play a game of 2 truths and 1 lie. And Educational Duct Tape podcast listeners know that I am horrible at this game. So you're going to give me 3 statements, Al, about yourself. 2 are going to be true. 1 is going to be a lie. I'm going to try to guess the lie, and there is a 90% chance that I will be wrong when I try to guess the lie. I don't know why I'm so bad at it, but that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So do you have 3 statements for me, Al? Are you up for that?
I do. I do have 3 statements, so I am ready to jump in, and I have
all right, go for it.
No doubt you will fail miserably.
You're right.
All right. So the first one is, I once worked for a professional basketball team.
Okay.
As a player.
Okay.
The second one, I once nearly got into a physical altercation with Shaquille O'Neal.
Okay. And no offense, you would have lost if the fight happened. I'm just assuming.
We'll see based on your responses, and then I'll let you know one way or the other.
All right. Okay.
So the last one is, and I I've been going back and forth whether I would give you one that was really just going to throw you off for a loop. So
Okay.
I'm trying to throw you off a little bit on this one.
Throw me off what way? You can't tell me.
No, I can't. No. Nice try. And so, all right. So I am, let's see, the age that I am at the moment. And so I am still not a strong swimmer.
All right. So once worked for a professional basketball team as a player, once nearly got in a physical altercation with Mr. Shaquille O'Neal, and despite your, did you say advanced age? Is that what you said there? Despite your advanced age, not a strong swimmer.
So this was all sports related. I wanted to give us a nice theme.
It was. I'm thinking. Gosh, I'm worried.
You're hoping they're all lies.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to go with here. I'm assuming that number one is the lie because you were a little bit sus when you said worked for a professional basketball team and then you added in as a player. So plus I would be surprised if you were and I wasn't aware. But I'm also concerned that you maybe almost got into a fight with Shaq because I can't imagine Shaq fighting anybody. He's always so happy. But I'm thinking number one's a lie. You did not work for a professional basketball team.
Is that your final answer? Because
yes, Regis,
there are so many professional teams all over the country and all over the world.
Okay. You played for the Washington Generals.
Exactly. So you are correct. That is the lie.
Okay, now we got that out of the way, but now I want to hear the other things. Okay, so not a strong swimmer. I'll send my kids over to give you some lessons, but I want to hear this.
Well, the struggle with that is I've always been taller than most people, so I can stand in most places, and I can get through do the things I need to, but let's just say I'm not going out into the ocean anytime soon.
Okay, you don't need to swim any laps anyhow. I want to hear about Shaq.
Exactly. So I did work for a professional basketball team. I worked for the Dallas Mavericks, and so got a chance to work as an assistant trainer. I had a friend of mine who was a trainer for the Dallas Mavericks, and he invited me in. And it's such a funny story because he was like, "Hey, I need someone to help me out. Can you come in to help?" And I said, "Sure, I'll come to help you out this one time. I'm not gonna do it long term. I just will go in." He said, "Hey, I'll give you." It was like I was a college student, so he said, "I'll give you like $50 a game." And so I came in and made about nearly $300 worth of tips. And I said, "Hey, I'll be back next game."
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I did that for a few years. And so working with them, and one game, Shaq, who is notoriously a jokester, he was talking to Phil Jackson, and I was in there and I was doing something, and I actually think was telling him or getting him over to the trainer to get some things taken care of. And he steps on my foot on purpose, and he just will not get off. This very large man who dwarfs me.
Size 22s.
And he just looks at me, and I look at him, and I'm like, this is one of those moments where I want to do what I would normally do as a college student at that point, who would just, let's go and getting into the point, and just looking at him again and going, there's no way I come out of this as a win if I engage this any further. So it was one of those moments where you just gracefully bow out and move on with your day. But it was all in jest, and we had some good laughs about it. So great guy. But it was one of those things where it was just very common for him to do some type of practical joke in the locker room with players and anyone else that was in his vicinity.
Right. You can imagine him saying to somebody else, "Watch me mess with this guy." Right.
100%.
I think the right move is to like step on his other foot. Like he's on your left foot, and you just take your right foot, step on his other foot, and just see.
You just hide his jersey.
Yeah, hide his jersey or write something on the back of his jersey that he won't see back there, like peel a letter off or something.
There you go.
Yeah, what a gig. I can't believe you thought you wouldn't do it long term. Like that would be amazing. What an experience that
You know, at a certain point, it had to be a transition and moving into what I really wanted to do. It definitely was, it was great for the time.
Yeah.
And so, but it was definitely not something I wanted to do, long term.
Yeah. And then education, right?
100%.
Nice. Awesome. I am going to ask you what I call here an educational duct tape question. And so for the people listening for the first time, which are your mom and whoever else you said is listening in to boost the statistics, I'm going to ask you a question that a teacher might ask. And we're going to view educational technology as the tool, as the duct tape, right? We don't set forth to use duct tape. We use duct tape as a tool when we have a certain problem. Something's broke, duct tape fixes it, right? Something in our classroom we want to achieve, educational technology might be the tool that solves it. Not always, but it might be. So my question to you is, and I'm definitely picking this based on the work that I've observed you doing on social media over the years. My question to you is, how can I engage my students in visual storytelling? And I think probably first we need to talk, what is that and why should I engage them in it? But the real thing we want to get to is how.
Yeah, no, absolutely great question. And visual storytelling is really about being able to communicate. How I would break it down is being able to communicate things that are important to you and being able to express those stories that you are passionate about and be able to tell them in a way that resonates with others. So that can be done in so many different ways. It can be done through photography, through video. It can be done through story, or just simply writing a narrative. There are so many ways that you can do it. And I think storytelling it's been one of those things, at least for me, that's always resonated, because when you hear a great story or you hear a great storyteller, it just sets with you. It makes you think, it makes you feel, it makes you set with an idea for a while. And those things are so powerful. And I've always, I think in the work that I've done, that's always been kind of the goal of is, how do we give or empower students so that they can be able to tell stories that they've identified with, their own stories that they're passionate about, to get those out to really impact the world. Because I mean, sometimes those stories get overlooked, or they don't get told, or they get told from a perspective that really doesn't truly understand the story that's being told. So I'm just a big fan of where that comes from. And I would say it all ties in. That ties into one of my heroes who recently passed away, Sidney Poitier. If you've never read his autobiography, The Measure of a Man, it's amazing. I always encourage people, read the book, but also get the audio version, because he is telling the stories and you can hear him, like in his voice, you can hear him reliving the moment. Yeah. And that's the power of storytelling. And
he's got one of those voices too.
100%. And so, yeah, it's just so important. So there's so many ways that you can bring it in. There's some great ways that I always encourage people to just kind of get started when it comes, or at least think about these things when you're wanting to bring visual storytelling to the classroom. And it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing that you have to do in the classroom. You can start really small. You can identify things that you like to watch or read, or what the students can think about things that they like to watch or read, and just simply study those. There's so many things you can pull out of watching and listening to the stories that resonate with us, or the storytellers that are able to communicate. There's so much that you can pull from it. And
yeah, I agree. So let's say I'm a teacher. I am a teacher. So I'm an 8th grade science teacher. I have only been in my role teaching this class for a little over a year. And I do a little bit of stuff that I would think, maybe isn't quite visual storytelling, but it involves some creativity. But as I'm still kind of getting my feet underneath me in this teaching position, I don't do a lot of it. So what are some ways that I might start? What are some kind of initial unintimidating things that I might want to try out to get some experience with this?
Yeah. So if we're just talking about, let's just take it from the standpoint of photography. And so I don't like saying that everyone has a camera. Not everybody has a camera. Not everyone has a smartphone, and not everyone has access to them. But there are ways to be able to use whatever you have. So if you have a camera, great. Photography is a great way to be able to just kind of bring in some of the elements. I think being able to capture and be able to understand the world around them. So one exercise I like to do that helps students be able to just kind of get up and moving and just kind of thinking and just kind of maybe even thinking about a problem in a different way. But so one of the activities that I'd like students to be able to do is called steps. And it's simply go for a walk, give them a predetermined number of steps, and then wherever you land, just take a photo, wherever that is. And it gets really interesting because what I typically will do is say, hey, what's your phone number? Pick the first three, the last four, whatever those are. Those are the steps you're going to take. Give them a random number, whatever it is, get them moving. And then when they land, wherever it is, take a photo.
I like that.
It's one of those things that you'll notice with your students. They find it very challenging in the first time they do it because they're so used to, okay, I need a roadmap to tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do. And I think that that's one of the times we do a disservice to our students. We want to give them guardrails, but we don't need to give them a map for every element.
Right.
Let them be uncomfortable in that messy portion of being creative. So you'll notice that students will all of a sudden, they'll take a picture in front of them. And then all of a sudden, maybe they'll take a picture of a student standing next to them. Then they may take a picture of the ground. Then all of a sudden they start looking above them and noticing things that they didn't notice before. Then they all of a sudden go, okay, what would happen if I zoomed in on something? And then all of these things get them to start to think through things and have a different perspective. And so it's a very simple activity that you can do in a matter of minutes. You can do it in any place, but it gets students to actually start to think creatively. And then jump right into what you have for them for the day. But it's a great way to just kind of get them started.
Yeah, one thing I like about this is every now and then I talk about reducing the cognitive load, and it's something that I think I first heard from John Carippo. But it's the idea of when you're starting something new, you don't want it to be new content and new technology and a new project and all of these things all at the same time, right? So rather than you giving them a rubric and giving them a certain topic that they're talking about, and maybe it's a content that they're not familiar with, and you're expecting them to take some kind of really fancy picture, and you're expecting them to show all these different things in the picture, you're just saying, walk this number of steps, take a picture. So you're reducing the cognitive load by doing it, and then they're going to be ready for the project when they get into the real like content area, maybe stuff. But also you're kind of opening their eyes up to the possibilities of an assignment like this, or of photography itself, or of visual storytelling, so that then when you get into something a little more, I don't want to say sophisticated, but something with a little more meat to it, they've kind of got their feet underneath them from the stuff that you've already done with this project, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's the staring at a blank sheet of paper. And so let's just get you going. Let's get you moving. Let's get you thinking in this way. And then let's apply that energy toward what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay. So what's something else? Actually, you know what? Before we do that, when you do these pictures, so I'm assuming for the most part you're using phones or something like that. Do you have any way that you prefer to maybe submit them or edit them or anything like that? Are there any other things that go along with that project, or is it just like take it, submit it, that's it for this?
So all of these things. So everything I would tell you that I'm going to share can build off of itself. So our build on top. So there is so many great tools that you can use. Canva, Spark, Creative Express.
Creative Cloud Express. Yep.
Yes. And so is great to be able to take images, videos that you've pulled in. And it's one of the things I always encourage, like for instance, if you're going on a field trip, have students capture things that are going on the field trip, things that are happening, and then have them come back and build something inside of Creative Cloud Express and be able to share it out. So same thing here. You can have them either using that tool to be able to create slideshow of the photos and images that they've taken. The other thing I would also encourage you to do is have a Google slide deck and have students just add their photo to a slide deck. And then what you can do after that is then take those photos and then have students write reflectively on the photos that other students have taken. It does one of the things I always encourage educators to think about is that think about when you were young and you would draw a picture or you would draw something of your family. I always joke that my daughter always draws me with hair on my head, none on my face. But it is one of those things where I absolutely love when she draws me. It's something that I am like jumping up and down, excited, and letting her see it. And it makes her, I know how it makes her feel when I'm able to respond in that way. It's something to think about when our students are creating and they get an opportunity to share their work or their work gets a chance to be displayed, a photo. Those opportunities to be able to present that to a group of peers and have it a part of other activities just communicates to them the value of it. And the more we can create those opportunities, the more they feel comfortable and willing to explore being creative. You don't have to put names on it. You don't have to assign it directly to a student. You can just create that experience where they can actually have something that they've captured that resurfaces at a later time. And now you're presenting it and putting it out for another activity or another opportunity for others to engage with it.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. That's a great point to share it out. Not only does it's good for that individual student to see their work kind of showcased in that way, but it's good for the other students to learn from what the other students did. Like you were saying, some of them realize, oh, I'm going to zoom in or I'm going to look up, other kids might not have thought of those things, right? So then they see it from the other kids and it kind of opens them up to some things that they weren't opened up to during their initial investigation on their own. Hey, I want to interrupt this conversation really quickly to tell you that the Inquiry Educators Summit is back. Today's sponsor, Toddle Ties, wants you to get ready for a festival of learning like no other with thought leaders like Sugata Mitra, Dylan William, Kath Murdoch, Ron Richart, Sylvia Duckworth, and over 100 other speakers across 10 plus unique session formats. What's new? Ties 2022 gives you opportunities to foster lifelong connections and build your professional learning network through one-on-one meetups, reflection circles, job-alike sessions, book discussions, and much more. In addition, make sure you transfer learnings to your classroom with a 3-month post-conference experience. Get hands-on with inquiry gurus and take a toolbox of strategies to apply in your context. You could choose to attend Ties 2022 solo or save big by attending as a group. As listeners of the Educational Duct Tape podcast, the first 100 of you who get your Ties 2022 pass can get 20% off on your pass. Simply use Ties 2022 EDT at checkout. So head to www.toddleapp.com/ties today and save big on your pass now.
Yeah, really cool thing that you can do with that is take a student's photo and zoom all the way in on it, and then slowly start to pull out, and then having the students guess or take a few of the photos that students have captured, and then have them write a story based on. Here, we're going to select random photos, and there's a variety of tools that you can use to select something randomly. Assign a photo a number, and then select them randomly, and then tell a story based on those 3 photos. And being able to just kind of think creatively and just kind of take, hey, I want you to write a story. I want you to write a narrative. I want you to do this thing that we need to do because it's required for us to do this, but doing it in a way that's creative that gets them to actually want to engage in the activity, and then also because they got to create something, they got to make something that they can carry with them and that they can be proud of.
Yeah, I like that. One thing you could do too with that, creating that story, is I think in like Wheel of Names, the spinner, wheelofnames.com, you can have, instead of names on the spinner, you could have pictures on the spinner. And 100%. So spin the spinner and then see what pictures turn up. And it could be the kids' pictures. If you have them all in a file, I think you could kind of just easily kind of drag and drop them into the file and create that spinner. And then you could save that spinner and come back to it another time too.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else can I do if I'm trying to bring in visual storytelling? Or maybe let's talk let's stick with that. What would you do next? So now I've done that with my students. They've experienced the photo taking process. They've seen that their photos are valued by their classmates. I've kind of whet their appetite for the idea of doing this. What might be something that you try out after that?
Yeah. So one of the things I love to do with students is 16 questions, one photo. And
Okay.
so you can do this in a variety of different ways, but it's coming up with 16 questions about a single photo. And so it's being able, and the 16 is arbitrary. You can choose any number. But 16 is typically where I go, because what that does is anyone can come up with 5. Anyone can, if you push yourself, you can come up with 10. But when you start getting into 12, 13, the questions start getting a little fuzzier. And so it forces you to start thinking a little bit more. But what this does is it allows, once again, for you to really dig beyond the layers. Like one photo I love to use is a photo of these men who they're lifting this, what looks like a large piano. And it's actually a hard drive. It's a 5 megabyte hard drive, but it's the size of a piano.
Right.
So you have these questions of like, okay, what are they doing? And you can interject some thoughts of like giving and revealing what is actually going on. But the fun in this is just letting their minds wander and let them just kind of be in that space of just kind of like being curious of what's going on here. It's a black and white photo. Another photo is the photo of, and I use it in trainings all the time when it's the mindset that students don't want to pay attention. They're so distracted by their phones, and it's a subway train, or it's a train with all adults on it, and they're not engaging with each other. They're just looking at the newspaper.
Right.
And it's one of those things where you go, okay, like there are so many thoughts that come to mind when you see this, but then those thoughts have a limit. And then how do I push through to come up with these additional questions that then get me to understand more of what's happening or make me curious, and then have students be able to reflect on that and be able to share deeper reflection beyond the questions, or have those questions, have them switch, and then have another student answer the questions that they've been created. So it gets an opportunity for students to be able to share thoughts, and then they see what other students, how their perspective is completely different. And then I think it opens up for some great conversations which I think are very needed in today's day and age, is everyone wanting to see things from their perspective only and not wanting to listen or hear anyone else. I think this is a great way for you to get students to start to do that. And so
that's an interesting point, because we tend to, as adults and the kids too, like you said, look at maybe a news story or something in social media, or a photo of somebody famous or a politician or an athlete or whoever it might be, and we make an assumption based on our perspective and our lens, right? But it's important to ask questions. Or maybe we see some kind of news story that seems, you start thinking about that stuff that, if it really kind of triggers you when you see it, maybe it's not all true, right? And we need to get in the habit of asking questions, right? So this is a kind of a cool way to think about not just asking the surface level questions, but asking even more questions. And I think that this also, a lot of times I worry when somebody listens, they're like, well, this is really great, Al, but this doesn't fit my content. But I think that this does too, because me as an 8th grade science teacher, I could show a picture of a river or of a glacier or of a fossil, and we could make up 16 questions about that. As a social studies teacher, they could show a map or some kind of historical picture and come up with questions on that. In math class, maybe it's a data set, or maybe it's a graph, or maybe it's a shape or something like that, and we come up with questions. And we could see in kind of all of the content areas a way to take a picture and use this strategy with it, whether it's a picture that we took or our students took, or some maybe primary source that we're using for this too.
Yeah, I think it's important for us not to restrict the opportunities that can be presented from just trying. And I think that goes back to what I shared earlier, is just really just trying and being willing to step out. And it's the ripples that happen in life. And I think that it's one of those things where when I look at teachers that were willing to give me the opportunity to be able to do something in the classroom or try something that was outside of the box, or maybe it didn't seem like it fit, but the opportunity gave me a safe space to explore and to discover the things that I'm passionate about. And I think that that's something we have to constantly keep in mind is that, yeah, I know for you as the educator, it may feel uncomfortable, but there may be a student in your classroom who's going, yes, this is exactly what I do when I go home. I get to do this here. I mean, okay. And then all of a sudden you look at what that student creates and then you go, oh, we could also do this. Yeah. So there's that opportunity of just trying and getting through that uncomfortable first step and being willing to just try and be able to do it. That I think it creates just magic. And I think I don't want to come off that it's easy. It's very uncomfortable. And it's as a former administrator, it's one of the things where I constantly go back is the fear of what happens if my administrator walks by and I'm doing this and it's a complete failure. Those are the things where I think we really need to think through how we're doing education when we don't feel like we have the space to be able to venture out and be able to create these opportunities or give students the opportunity to be creative in the classroom.
Yeah, if we have an administrator who would be disappointed in us for that, especially if we said, well, I was trying this out because I thought the kids would enjoy it and it turns out it didn't work, right? Like if our administrator's frustrated by that, then I think that's a problem. That's a whole different episode of the podcast, I think, if that's our situation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's say I do both of these activities in my class. Let's say I, as a science teacher, just use me for an example. Let's say I do the walking thing and we take the pictures and we look at each other's maybe, and maybe we write some random stories about them, about a set of pictures, and we compliment each other on our work and look at each other's work. And then we try out this one here where we take some pictures and ask 16 questions or however many we select about it. And then let's say later, I am in a unit where we're studying something that could be outside. So let's say, we're talking erosion, and I'm fortunate that at my school, there's a creek right near my school, lots of examples of erosion there. So the weather's nice. I'm going to take my kids outside and take some pictures. Okay. So let's say we do that. We use whatever devices we have access to take some pictures. What kind of I don't know, what kinds of considerations are you making? Maybe what kind of tools are you using? If you're doing some kind of project where all your kids are taking pictures that relate to specific content from the class.
Great question. There's a variety of different directions. Just with the example that you shared, there's a few activities that I would probably lean towards. So one that I've shared quite a bit on is 1-minute documentaries is, I think, a great way to be able to do that. So there is ways to be able to tell very short formatted stories that you're expressing an idea or a concept or thinking. So I think that if you're given the opportunity to be able to get out and explore, being able to capture footage and be able to use things like Adobe Premiere Rush, and I know I'm going to say this wrong multiple times until it gets ingrained in my head, but the Adobe Creative Cloud Express.
No, you nailed it. I think that's right.
Yeah, and I want so bad to call it Spark, so forgive me.
Right.
But it's one of those things of being able to take those tools out. They're slide-based and they're really simple to be able to use. I've seen students, kinder, first, third, high school, be able to take that slide-based, capture the images that tell the story of where they're at and what they're doing, that they can also information that they're collecting. Maybe they want to be able to collect specific information, capture that and bring it into those tools, and then be able to share that out and be able to tell the story of the experience that they are doing.
Yeah, I like the way you went with that there, where you're making a video, but maybe you're not taking videos in the process, right? Maybe you're taking pictures and kind of putting them together and narrating it, right? And the narration is huge there, because then we could actually hear from our students, not only in my situation, did they find examples of erosion, but they're telling me in the video what kind of erosion, or how they know it's erosion, or what evidence they're seeing that it's erosion. And now I'm not only just seeing some neat pictures they took, I'm able to actually measure their comprehension and see their comprehension from that. So I really like the angle you took with that. And you said that was with Rush or Creative Cloud, Adobe Creative Cloud Express? Those are what you're recommending there?
Yeah. So if you're wanting to do for younger students, or if you just want to be able to have a really quick way to be able to do that, Adobe Creative Cloud Express is great at being able to do that. Adobe Premiere Rush is what I would say you can use it with probably higher elementary on up. It gives you a lot of great tools that you can use. One of the features I love is if let's say you're recording audio in a noisy environment, or if you are it has features that allow for you to click a button and it basically will help remove a lot of the background noise. If you are having music playing underneath your video, when it detects someone talking, it will lower the volume automatically for you. And then when you go into where it's just an image where no one's talking, then it will raise the music. So it does all that for you. So it makes it really simple to be able to create. So those are all great tools to be able to do that and be able to capture.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm going to throw in there too, Al, alongside those, for those people with Apple devices, Apple Clips, I think is a pretty similar tool to both of those, right? Where it's slideshow based and short videos and easy to work with, and maybe not kinders using it, although maybe, but younger kids can use it and come out with a pretty slick product in a relatively short amount of time.
One of the other things, and this would probably maybe push and maybe not initially see the value of being able to use it. But it's some really cool things you can do with Adobe Capture. Adobe Capture is an app. It's a free app that you can download on iOS or Android. And what it allows you to do is just a variety of different things. So you can actually take it out using your camera on your smartphone, capture shapes in the real world, and then bring them into other projects that you're wanting to build. So if you wanted to grab material, so let's say you want to capture the texture of a leaf, you can actually use that to be able to capture that. And what it will do is it will actually give you maps of the images. It will give you different ways that you can actually see the images, whether if maybe you wanted to look at it like what it would look like if it was in infrared, and it would basically create those things for you.
Yeah, I'm looking at this site right now, Al. This is so cool. I was not familiar with Adobe Capture.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of it is if you've ever tried to figure out a font, and this is beyond the example that you were just sharing, but if you ever saw a font on a shirt or on a wall, you can actually go into Adobe Capture, go into the type section, and there's a button to open up your camera, and then just hold it up to the font, and it'll tell you exactly what the font is.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I'm looking at their site right now, and it's got these really cool pictures of turning images into like vector. It's all vector, I guess. So those people who work with maybe laser cutters and things like that, they know what or vinyl cutters, they know what a vector image is. But it breaks it down, so it's not a picture, more of a graphic, and some really, really cool ones. I'm excited to play with this. And this is a way to, like, my students, if I take them on that walk that we were talking about to find examples of erosion, they might be like, yeah, whatever, dude, like my 8th graders. But if I could find something like this that kind of levels it up in terms of just the excitement or the interest, right? That alone might be a big sell for my students.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's a lot there. We've got Adobe Capture, we've got Adobe Creative Cloud Express, we've got Adobe Premiere Rush. We could see where your allegiance is here, Al. And I threw in Apple Clips, and we've got a couple different ways to go about this with projects. We've got the walk activity, we've got the 16 questions activity, and we've got the 1-minute documentary activity. Are there any other like apps or tools or technologies or websites that you want to give a shout out to, aside from those kind of big 4 that we mentioned there, in terms of visual storytelling?
Yeah, I love how you called me out on that. But I will hold our friendship. I'll hold our friendship dear to my heart. And so, and I'm a big component where I tell people all the time when it comes to apps, data round. But I think that those are some great ones. But I talk a lot about 1-minute documentaries, and one of the things that usually happens in the conversation is that, hey, my students loved it, but I have these students, a few students that really want to do more. They want to have access, and one of the tools that I always express you really should try out is DaVinci Resolve. If you have a student in your room who is younger or who may not have access that they're on their campus or at home to editing software, they can go to Blackmagic Design, DaVinci Resolve. They have a nonlinear editor for video that is very feature rich, and they could download that for free, use that, and be able to learn how to edit, and then transition that over into a variety of different other platforms, whether it was Adobe Premiere, whether it was Final Cut on the Mac, wherever you end up landing. But it's a great tool, and it's a great way for those students that are just trying to learn to be able to get out and start creating and just kind of just making. So it removes that barrier, because oftentimes I hear, well, I love this, my students are passionate about this, but then they can't afford to. It's so expensive.
Yeah.
Well, there are pathways to start getting into some of these tools that are free. There are tools that are made accessible to you that you can just kind of jump in and be able to try. I personally love, when it comes to photo editing, I love Lightroom. You can download the mobile app for free. It's a great tool. There's a camera app that's built into that as well. You can capture and edit your photos directly in that. It's absolutely great. I love it. Canva to make some great tools that are great to be able to use. Very similar to Adobe Creative Cloud Express. And so
you did it again.
I am doing the very best I can. but there are tons, and I have on my website, I have a creative app database.
Yes. Yeah. You've got that. That's an amazing resource in there. I'm definitely gonna have to put a link to that in the show notes, that kind of a spreadsheet kind of based list of just like, you don't have the Kahoots and quizzes and Quizlets in there. You have the, at least I don't believe you do. You have the creative things in there, the things where you're really creating in there. And so it's a really great list of stuff to check out.
Yeah, it's all centered around there. Hey, what can I build with this? What can I make with this? Or what can, how does this fit into me being creative? And I think that there's so many amazing tools that are out there. And and I think that I try to make it easier for you to just go in, search, and find, hey, I'm looking for something that's for video, and you can quickly find some options that are available for that. Or if you're wanting to find, I want to edit audio, and there's tools that are available, and a variety of others that are available. But there are some amazing tools that are available. One of the things I would encourage as we talk more about this is really ask your students what they're using, and exploring some of those tools that they may be using that you're not aware of, and just look at ways that you can bring them into the classroom. I just think that there's so many tools. We could be here all night talking about so many of the amazing tools that are available. Yeah,
the nice thing about asking the kids about it is not only is it going to potentially bring in new information for you, it's also going to give you kind of a formative assessment of what the kids like and don't like. But it also just shows them that you are interested in their perspectives on things, that you value their opinion on it. And they are very excited to say, well, I like this one because this, right? And that's huge for them to get to say that to a teacher, and to get to kind of say why they pick a tool they pick. A couple questions about some of the ones you shared. So DaVinci Resolve, I was not familiar with. Am I correct in understanding that there's a like a fully featured free version that they could use? It's not just a trial; it's a free version they could use, and then kind of an up-leveled paid version. Is that right?
Yeah. So there are a couple of different levels of it. So there's a free version that's available.
Nice.
That works great. It's about 97%. Yeah. That you're getting access to when you go in and use it.
Nice.
And then there's some few additional features that you don't get, but you would be able to learn and produce tons of things without ever having to pay for a platform. And it's a professional editing platform.
I love it.
So you get the ability to be able to learn.
Yeah.
But you can download the free version. It's a great program, and it's actually one of the top programs when you if you get in. Want students that want to get into coloring videos, which is, it's a whole nother beast in itself. This is one of the top programs for that. So it's one of those things where if you have that student who is a future filmmaker who wants to really go deep into it, this is a great thing to put on their radar and just kind of push them forward into.
Yeah, it looks really cool. Really cool. The other one I wanted to ask about, you mentioned Adobe Photoshop Lightroom. That one's not a free one. That's part of the Creative Cloud membership. Is that right?
Yeah. And it's, apologize for the confusion, but it's not my fault. But Adobe Lightroom, the mobile version, is actually free. So you can go and sign up for a free account. You can go into the App Store and download those.
Nice.
There is a part of the subscription. There is what's called Lightroom Classic. And then there's also Lightroom. That's a part of the Adobe Creative Cloud suite. When you go, and if you actually have a paid membership for the Lightroom or the Lightroom Classic version, it will sync with the mobile version. So if you have photos, they're going back. So they're syncing together. But you can just download the Adobe Lightroom app on your mobile device, sign into it with a free Adobe account, and then have access to all the features other than being able to sync to the actual desktop client. That is the more full feature. I don't want to say full feature because it's not really, you're not lacking features. It's just there's a few things that are different. So, but you get a really robust experience from using the free version.
Nice. I often find that in a situation like that where there's a free version and then there's a more fully featured paid version, a lot of times the free version is kind of better for in the classroom anyhow, because it's a little less overwhelming, right? And then maybe later we see the opportunities to go with the full version.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Al, I think that we have thrown a lot of ideas at people here, a lot of different tools to try out and activities to try out with them. So we're going to tie a bow on this. But before we do that, I think you've inspired me to do this. I want to see educators out there try one of these tools out. One of the things you've mentioned, because you've mentioned multiple ones that I've never heard of and a few that I've heard of but never used. And I think that's going to be the same thing for the listeners. So I'm going to throw a challenge out there to the listeners, and anybody who sends me and Al something that they create with one of these tools that they've never tried before, based off of something Al shared today, I'm going to do a giveaway. I think somebody's going to get a book, get an educational duct tape book for trying out one of these new tools for today. Because that's how our students learn from it. That's how we learn from it, is to just get in there. And as Eric Kurtz says, poke a stick at it, right? So pick one of these tools, try it out, send it to me and Al, tag us on Twitter or on Instagram or something like that. Let's see what you make. Let's see which tool you tried out. Let's hear about it.
I'm going to actually go a step further.
You're going a step further?
I have an organization that I have the privilege of serving on the board. They are called 100 Cameras. Incredible organization that teaches students how to do photography, and then basically allows for them to sell their photos. And then all the money that is raised from them selling their photos goes to impact work directly that the students have selected. So things in their community and impact. So one of the things that they've just created was they have their newest book that highlights the student photography over the past year. I'm going to send that to you so that you can add that into that giveaway for that.
I love it. That is so awesome.
You can see the amazing work that these students are doing, and then once again inspire you to create these opportunities for your students.
I love it. Well, folks, you've got your call to action right now. Pick a tool, try it out, tag us on social media, show us what you made, tell us what you think of it, and one of you are going to get this super awesome book from the 100 Cameras project. Is that what you said it's called? 100 Cameras?
100 Cameras.
Nice. And you're going to get a copy of the educational duct tape book there too, which references Adobe Spark multiple times in the book. That's the first thing that is woefully outdated about my book, is that it says Adobe Spark instead of Adobe Creative Cloud Express. But they'll get a picture. It'll be a collector's item because they'll get a book, and it'll be a collector's item because it has the old name of the tool in there. Come on, Adobe. Well, Al, thank you so much for being on the show today. You shared some really, really cool stuff. I'm excited to go play with it. I'm excited to show my kids some of this stuff to try out, and I'm excited to see what teachers make from it. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
All All right, guys, great stuff shared with you by Al Thomas, and a big double giveaway, one coming from me, one coming from him. I can't wait to see what you share. Let's review really quickly what we talked about with Al. First, he shared the Sidney Poitier autobiography, The Measure of a Man. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. He shared a couple of different awesome activities you could do to get your kids involved in visual storytelling. He shared the STEPS activity, the 16 questions in one photo activity, the 1 minute documentaries activity, the idea of zooming out from a picture, start way zoomed in and zoom out slowly and write about it where you go, or selecting random images maybe that students took and writing a story based on those images. In terms of technology tools, he talked about Adobe Creative Cloud Express, formerly known as Adobe Spark. He talked about Canva, talked about Adobe Premiere Rush, Adobe Creative Cloud Express. I said that already. He talked about Apple Clips. He talked about Adobe Capture. That's an app. He talked about DaVinci Resolve. He talked about Adobe Premiere and Final Cut and Final Cut Pro and Adobe Photoshop Lightroom. Now, when you think about all of those different technology tools that he talked about, you can also check out Al's creativity app database on his website, which is educopilot.com. Is it .com or is it .org? I'm going to check my notes here. Is it .com? You're listening to me checking my notes. This is riveting. It's .com. Okay, I just want to make sure. It's .com, but there's a link to it in the show notes. So you can go ahead over there and click on it. A couple other things Al shared that were kind of here and there. Let's see. What else did I have down? We talked about cognitive load. We talked about the website wheelofnames.com for picking those random images. One quote that I jot down in my notes that Al mentioned was he said, we want to give them guardrails, but we don't need to give them a map for every element. He said, let them be uncomfortable in that messy portion of being creative. I like that a lot. Give them guardrails, but not a map. That's a really cool idea of how to frame, we want to put some limitations and, keep them safe and keep them on task and everything, but we need to give them a little bit of space to get a little bit messy in the creativity process sometimes. And finally, Al shared about the 100 Cameras project, which is an awesome project. Let's now jump into the celebration of the adjacent possible. Last but certainly not least, time for my favorite part of the show, which is the celebration of the adjacent possible. As I've mentioned before, adjacent possible is the idea that whatever you do, whatever you try, whoever you talk to, whoever you listen to, wherever you go, opens you up to new adjacent possibilities. Things that are possible for you that are right next to, just beyond where you currently are right now. They are adjacent possibilities. They are adjacent to what you're already doing. And these connections and discussions between me and me and the guests, and you, between duct tapers, between educators, those open up all of our adjacent possibilities. Okay, for today's shares, we're going to turn to the hashtag EDU duct tape Twitter space. Not a whole lot going on in the SpeakPipe or in the podcast reviews or on the Flipgrid grid, but that's okay because Twitter is keeping me busy. We had hashtag EDU duct tape tweets over the last few weeks from Sarah Gunn at HMS Gunn, Gunn, from a friend of the show, Pan Hubler at Special Techie, who shared the episode with Chris Nessie and said, listening to two of my favorite hashtag EDU rock stars this morning, you know how there are people you want to sit down and have a beverage with? These two are on my list. Well, Pam, you were on my list. I'm ready for that beverage. Also, a couple of tweets from Jonathan Lee at JLeeTech% and at Show Me Education, which is Jonathan's podcast, which I was on recently. Check that episode out. A tweet about the show from Stacy Roshan at BuddyXO. A tweet from Ronald Nober at Nober_TechClass, who created a pretty sweet Godfather of Podcasting logo for Chris Nessie after that episode. I'm a little bit jealous of that logo. It was pretty sweet. Chris is the Podfather, I call him. A tweet from a couple of Canadians, Janique Casley or Casley. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it right, but she is at 6 Casley, Casley. Another friend of the show, Brian Carpenter at Brian Carr, BRYONCAR. A tweet from Cameron Ross at Cameron Ross 3, and another former Educational Duct Tape guest, Tisha Poncio at TX Tech Chick. CHIC, said two of my fave podcast hosts talking about one of my favorite topics. Podcasting with students was one of the coolest lessons I had as a teacher. And if you have questions about microphones, these are the experts. And then she shared the hashtags and the link to the episode with Chris Nessie. Thank you for that, Tisha. And thank you everybody else for sharing about the show. If you've got a question, tweet it to me at Jake Miller Tech. email it to me, jakemillertech@gmail.com. Submit it on the show's Flipgrid, flipgrid.com/edu duct tape, or record a message on my SpeakPipe page, speakpipe.com/edu duct tape. Those links, of course, are also in the show notes. I can't wait to hear your questions. All right, and finally, it's time for the most important part of the show when I give you your homework for this episode, because I'm a teacher, so I've got to assign homework right at the end of the episode. Your homework for this week is to find an educator who hates it when the lazy river is not lazy. Find that educator and tell them to listen to the Educational Duct Tape podcast. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean, and you're like nodding your head. You go to the water park, whether it's an indoor or outdoor water park, and you're like, oh, a lazy river. That's the spot where I could lay in a float and float around while my kids play. Then you get in there, and not everybody's being lazy. People are hustling in the lazy river. The lazy river is not a place for hustling. It's not a place for horseplay. It's a place for being lazy and lounging. It's called the lazy river for a reason. Anyhow, I sound like I'm like 90 years old and I'm yelling at people to get off my lawn. Find another educator who feels the same way about the lazy river and tell them, listen, the host of the Educational Duct Tape podcast is a curmudgeon just like you, and you should listen in. So tell them about the show. That's your homework for today. I need you to handle that. Hey, Sonny? Okay, that does it for today's episode. Check the show notes for details about signing up for my newsletter, joining the Duct Tapers Facebook group, inquiring about having me speak at an upcoming event, getting some podcast stickers, and more. And don't forget to do your homework. As always, as a parent, I'm grateful for the work you do, and as an educator, I'm proud of your dedication to lifelong learning.
Thank you for listening to the Educational Duct Tape Podcast. Please visit eduducttape.com to join the discussion, share possible topics, inquire about being a guest, or contact Jake. And remember, duct is spelled with a T, not a quack quack K.
Well, we're going to skip the Would You Rather game because that's a cool story. So we'll just stick with that. We won't even bother recording the other one. That's a fun one to include. So we'll just go with that and jump into it. Sound good?
I was so ready for the Would You Rather. I wanted to hear from your son.
Do you want to play just in case?
Of course.
Okay, hold on.
I think I'm going to be the first where you include both.
There's actually been one where I've included both. It was John Carippo. Do you know John?
I do.
Yeah, and they were both just so funny. I was like, I have to record both of them. Actually, very early on in the show, I did both of them, and I was like, I'm taking too long for this, and sometimes one of them's lame. And then I switched. But since I've switched, John was the only one who I included both of. So here we go. Okay, so we're gonna play a game of which of the following is less torturous. It's got a more common name, but here on the Educational Duct Tape podcast, it is which of the following is less torturous. And today's question is coming from my son, Cohen, the oldest of my three kiddos. Are you ready for this question, Al?
I am ready.
Okay. It's a tricky one. He leveled it up, too. You'll see in a second here.
Which of the following would be less torturous? Sleeping on a cement bed or every night drinking Brussels sprouts and mayonnaise soda, or wearing underwear made only with Velcro?
Who does a would you rather or which of the following is less torturous and puts three options in there? My son, that's it. So sleeping on a cement bed.
I have so many questions.
Right. He's in bed right now while we're recording. So
I love the imagination. I absolutely love the imagination, but it's one of those. You've ever heard the phrase of that rare genius that will never be truly appreciated? Right. And I think this is one of those moments.
I think you might be right. So what is it? Which of the following would be less torturous? Sleeping on a cement bed, drinking a nightly cup of Brussels sprout and mayonnaise soda, or wearing underwear that's made only of Velcro. He's not clear on which side of the Velcro. Is the Velcro sealed and you're just worried about it, or is it one of the sides only?
This is so easy. It's not even. I mean, it's not even difficult because I refuse. There is no way it's going to happen in any shape, form. I refuse to eat mayonnaise at any point. It will not happen. It will have to be one of those things where you are telling me that it is death, and then I will strongly consider still not doing it.
Right. And then maybe you'll gag down the mayonnaise.
Concrete bed, I can figure it out. I mean, there's things you can do, and the Velcro underwear. I mean,
I don't think we need to honor that part with an extended conversation.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's clear. I think anyone who is not eliminating or picking the middle or the second choice, I have questions about if we can be friends.
Well, you're going cement bed though, right?
No, I'm going the drink. The Brussels sprouts and mayonnaise are like that's the most torturous.
That's the most torturous. Okay, so what do you? So your pick. So what do you pick?
Say my pick would be the cement bed. Would be so good. So I guess I am horrible at playing games because this is.
I'm going
instructions.
No, Al, I'm going. To me, the least torturous is the mayonnaise and Brussels sprouts soda.
All right, so this was a great podcast. I thank you for having me.
You're done. He's leaving. Al, I'll come back. Al, we're gonna talk about text still.